Special thank you again to Debbie for always having us here and be able to present a little bit. As you can probably tell, our team is always very excited to be here. Many of our people really never get to see patients and families, so being able to interact with them is really special. And then, of course, many of us talk with you over the phone too, and then getting to meet you in person is also equally special. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a context before we move to the panel itself. Give you a little overview of the Prion Center, how it started, what our mission is, just very basic findings, and then we'll do our Q&A panel. So our mission is we were started in 1997 at Case Western Reserve University through CDC funding, really in response to the variant CJD epidemic, much like many other countries. We wanted to start a human surveillance program to make sure that BSE or mad cow disease wasn't transmitting to humans. Of course, that mission has changed over the years. Thankfully, we don't see a lot of variant CJD, but as you heard with Dr. Maddox's talk yesterday, we do have the very real threat of chronic wasting disease, and that's kind of been our primary focus over the last few years. We do neuropathologic surveillance funded through the CDC, and that's important because that's the only way to have a definitive diagnosis, and it also helps us to determine the type of prion disease. It also allows us to do surveillance, not just clinically, but actually having a laboratory test to say that this is prion disease or not. And of course, our very big focus is on preventable or potentially novel forms of prion disease, like variant CJD, medically transmitted CJD, and possibility of chronic wasting disease transmitting to humans. So we have several aspects of the Prion Center. This has evolved over time as well. At the core of it, though, is the neuropathologic surveillance. That's what we get funding for CDC. That's how we know what's going on in our country. And that includes things like autopsy coordination and all the different diagnostic tests that you'll hear about later that we do to determine if it's prion disease and what type it is. All these other spheres are just designed to actually improve that central sphere of doing neuropathologic surveillance. So we can help clinicians diagnose the case by offering clinical diagnostic testing. And we have a CLIA clinical lab that allows us to do that. We do clinical testing on spinal fluid for 14-3-3 and tau proteins, as well as RT-QuIC. And we can do genetic testing on brain tissue, but also on blood. Of course, research is very important. Most of our research that's done in the center is characterizing disease, making sure that what we think we're looking at is what we think we're looking at and that we're not missing new things. But also, as you'll see later, we've accrued so many samples over the years that we really are an important platform for other people to do their research. So I think many people in the audience, researcher-wise, have received either data or samples from us, and we see that as part of our mission as well, is to help advance their research. Outreach and education, you can never do enough, right? I think the number one thing that people want to see here is more education. We try, but people have to want to learn too, right? But we do presentations, we try to publish as much as we can. We have an excellent website, and we help the foundation whenever we can. Consultations with physicians that need help on diagnosing their cases, but we also work very closely with state public health departments like Texas and Oregon, who's here at this meeting. We have the MRI consultation program where patients and families can send their MRIs and we can look at that for them. I know many of you have participated in that. And of course, we have the telemedicine program as well. And then over the last few years, we've also seen that our mission is to help facilitate advances in treatment by helping to guide and inform clinical studies and to provide quick and easy access to the knowledge that there are clinical trials. So on our reports, if it's a probable case of CJD, positive RT-QuIC, we do have information about active clinical trials so that the diagnosing physician knows immediately that there's one available. This is a graph that shows basically all the diagnostic testing that we've done on brain tissue. The top line, the yellow line, is the total number of brains that we've received over time. The line below that, the orange one, is the number of cases that were actually prion disease. So as you'll see here, not all brains that we look at wind up being prion disease. About 60 to 7% are positive. And that's good because we don't want to just take cases that we absolutely think are prion disease, because how are we going to find new forms of prion disease if we assume we know what it looks like? But most of our cases do wind up being prion disease. The line below that, the red line, are cases of sporadic CJD. In our country, that's about 90% of cases. And then the line below that, the pink line, is genetic or familial CJD. In our country, it's about 10%. And thankfully, the number of cases of variant and iatrogenic CJD are very low. Our last case of variant CJD was in 2015. We've had 4, all of which were thought to have been acquired overseas. And we still occasionally see iatrogenic CJD. I think Ryan yesterday talked about the last one we had last year, which had an incubation period from human growth hormone of about 50 years. We can also look at positive RT-QuIC, because that's very suggestive of prion disease. So this is a graph of those individuals that were positive for RT-QuIC who did not donate their brain. As you can see there, it's still a fair number, between 300 to 350 over time. That's one way to diagnose probable CJD now. So we can take the number of definite cases that went to autopsy and those who did not go to autopsy, but we have a positive RT-QuIC, combine those, and that really gives us a good sense of how many highly probable cases of CJD we have in our country. So if you look at that, the orange line, you see it's very close to what actually Dr. Maddox showed yesterday when he looks at everything, death certificates, autopsy data, whatnot. And that's just south of about 600 a year. So now, very big thank you to Gabby, who had her birthday yesterday, if you didn't hear at the banquet. She very quickly threw together 2 videos for us to look at. The first one, I think, is very exciting, especially for Tatiana, our new biorepository, that somehow she cleaned up and got up and running under a year, which, again, we have about 8,000 brains. So without further ado.
The National Prion Disease Pathology Surveillance Center proudly operates a 1,485 square foot repository that is located within the Cleveland Center for Membrane and Structural Biology. The repository continues to grow to meet the needs of the Prion Center and is currently equipped with 33 ultra-cold freezers that are storing almost 8,000 brains. This space allows the Prion Center the capabilities to support research efforts globally. Requests are received, processed, and selected for collaborating scientists. Staff maintain all freezers, and monitoring is achieved remotely 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The system in place sends notifications to designated staff electronically. As a part of our inventory initiative, we are able to select brains for a variety of different criteria utilizing a barcoding system within our research management software system known as LabMatrix.
So I think that's been very exciting for us to have all our freezers in one place. It certainly makes it more efficient than having to go all across campus at case trying to find what you need. But yeah, so we're very excited about that. And of course, we would love to have everyone up here on stage, but we would break the stage. So we're going to show some videos of people actually doing the work at the center, and then we'll open up the panel.
The National Prion Disease Pathology Surveillance Center is the only center of its kind in the United States. The center coordinates autopsies and neuropathologic examinations of suspected prion disease cases from across the country. Local autopsies are performed on-site, and other cases are performed elsewhere through a network of providers that the center coordinates. In the field of prion disease, Western blotting is an important technique used to identify positive cases and their subtypes, as well as establishing the type of abnormal protease-resistant form of the prion protein, also known as scrapie prion protein. This procedure involves running proteins from patient samples and marking them with specific antibodies, allowing the lab to determine whether the case is positive and to identify the subtype. The histology lab sections, processes, and embeds tissue for histological and pathological analysis. They primarily utilize immunohistochemistry, allowing us to visualize the presence of prion protein within samples. Additionally, they use the H&E stain, known as the gold standard, to provide a comprehensive view of cellular and tissue structures for routine pathological diagnosis. On fixed brain tissue obtained either at autopsy or biopsy, the histology lab excludes or confirms, then characterizes the prion disease by microscopic examination following ordinary histological procedures and analysis of the prion protein, as well as a pattern of tissue distribution. In the CSF lab, prion marker testing is performed through a prion panel, 1433, tau, and RT-QuIC. The 1433 protein is a marker for some prion diseases, such as CJD, when a number of other neurodegenerative conditions are excluded. The CSF team measures total tau in CSF, which is markedly elevated with prion disease. RT-QuIC, real-time quaking-induced conversion, is a high-specificity test that is used to detect abnormal prion protein. The molecular genetic lab searches for the presence of a mutation in the prion protein gene and determines the polymorphism at codon 129 and at other codons. This is tested through DNA extracted from blood, brain, or any other tissues.
Again, Gabby, thank you very much for doing that. And thank you all for all that you've done for us over the years, and of course, donating your loved ones' organs for research, not just for surveillance, but also for a lot of the research that you heard about this weekend. So the next piece, I get to introduce our wonderful team. I'll start with you, Tia, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, tell people what you do, and then we'll go down the table. I don't think that one works.
Oh, there's a, wait,
Yeah.
Can you hear me? No? Okay. Hi, everyone. I am Tia, and I work in the histology lab, the Prion Center. I've been here about 2 years now. My background is actually, I'm a mortuary college student grad, Ohio licensed embalmer for over 20 years, and 15 years in histology. I really enjoy working with the center, and I'm sorry, I'm very nervous. I thought Brian was going to introduce me, but so I'm winging it.
I think you're doing a wonderful job.
But that's my background. So I've always been interested in pathology. First it was funeral industry, and then I was like, oh, let me go over to the hospital side. And I love surgical pathology. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
That's okay, Tia. I think lab folks tend to like to be to ourselves, and in the labs, we tend to be a little bit introverted. We don't like to be out in front of everybody, so it's okay. I get it. So I'm Tatiana Weaver. I'm the lab manager. Yes, the repository has been something I'm so very, very proud of. I'm so very, very happy to be able to talk to all of the family members about how we are caring for, because I get that question, do you know where my family member's brain is at all times? And we can confidently 100% say, yes, I can pull it up in 30 seconds in our system and tell you exactly where, what drawer, where location. And so I'm very proud of that we're able to offer that for the community. But my main role at the Prion Center as the manager is for regulatory compliance. So I ensure that all of our standards are met, and I will soon also be working closely with the FDA as they're moving into diagnostic labs oversight. So I'll be probably pretty busy pretty soon.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle. I am the autopsy program manager. I've been with the center for about 20 years this year, so woohoo. But my colleague Megan Lewis, who's our autopsy specialist, and then we have a new clinical surveillance coordinator who also helps serve families, is back at the center holding down the fort. But thank you all for having us.
I'm Katie Glisic. I'm the admin team lead. She's got 2 years on me, so it'll be 18 years for me this year. So I started just as Dr. Gambetti's secretary. So for the older families, you probably talked to me on the phone. So for the newer ones, you probably emailed me at some point. But I help Brian run some of the projects. TAP is one of them, and I also do the research projects. So pull a lot of data for people, and I manage the funding and make sure everything's going as planned.
So I think, again, math wasn't my major, but we have accrued 50 years of experience at the Prion Center on this stage right now, which is, it's only been around for 26 years?
Yeah, it'll be 26 years.
Yeah, 26 years, so 50 years combined up here, so that's pretty special. I think we all really like working there. It's really a unique place, and we're happy to come here and share what we do. So anyone had any questions or comments? We can open it up to you all. Raise your hand for the running Australians.
My question is, do you keep the brains forever? Do you keep the samples forever?
We
And
do.
do you go back and as the testing progresses, do you go back and then retest maybe someone, like our son had MM1 and MM2 sporadic CJD. So as the testing methods progress, then do you go back and retest those same samples?
Yeah, so one of the very helpful thing about being around for 26 years and having a rapidly evolving epidemic of a prion disease in animals is the value of historical controls. All right, so we have samples from individuals from states before chronic wasting disease arrived, and that's really helpful to be able to compare to that. But also, we do have cases that might not exactly match what we know, and we mark that, and then we go back, and if we see other cases like that, we test them together. I know Dr. Callie is doing that for some cases now, so we're always kind of going back and looking. Did you guys want to comment on that? Okay. No. I guess not. One of the good things about prion disease that's a little bit different from other biorepositories like, say, Alzheimer's disease or frontotemporal dementia is the age of the tissue doesn't really make a difference because prions are so hardy, they can really be valuable for an extremely long time. So, yeah.
Not really a question, but a comment, really, and a word of thanks to the services you provide. We had our daughter's brain autopsied, and that process was very easy thanks to you guys. In that stage, you don't really know what to do, how to do it, all the arrangements. I mean, there's just a lot going on at that time, but just to know that we can just contact you and you basically handle everything for us. It was free, we didn't have to pay for anything, and it was all just kind of taken care of, was crucial to us, and it just really made it worthwhile to know that, Natalie's brain is going to be there for research and for data and things like that. So just basically a shout out to you guys for everything that you do, and thank you.
Brian and colleagues, I'd just like to say the same thing from the research community. I mean, I think you may know you're the largest contributor to the international genetic studies. I talked about some of those yesterday. Really easy to do business with, and I think super support well done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I had a question, if that's okay, for Tatiana. So Tatiana, I don't know how much you talked about your background, but you came from a clinical lab setting. And we do have a clinical lab at the Prion Center, but it's kind of like roll your own clinical lab, right? We're the only clinical lab at Case. Usually everything's done through the hospital that we're associated with. Can you give us an overview of what that means and some of the challenges of that in the setting of something like the surveillance center at a university?
I will try. The uniqueness of the Prion Center, just starting off as something that Dr. Gambetti came up with and then growing to what we are now. Once you start adding in clinical diagnostics, not only are we bound by all of the research standards, but now you've got a whole level of clinical standards. And because we do testing for the entire United States, now I have to be mindful of all of the state laws that our testing has to be abiding by as well. Being a New York licensed laboratory is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to work through with regulatory compliance. And sitting inside of a university where they're all research laboratories, not knowing what that additional layer of compliance needed took a lot of time. Looking for resources to help support and keep the center growing so that we could support what our efforts were clinically. We just launched a new laboratory information system so we could better support data transfer, get reports out faster and more directly to our providers. We're working on an interface where we can send our data now directly to Department of Health's. So we're really trying to move the center somewhere while having a university that's trying to understand still, what do you guys do there at the Prion Center? So having to, even within our own, our own place to kind of continue to advocate for what a special thing we have there at Case, and to keep rallying support, because that all costs money. So, yeah.
And I know another thing that you're very proud of, I didn't even warn you about this because I know you know it off the top of your head. What is the current turnaround time for RT Quick?
5.4 days.
Then she delivers.
Brian, really just great presentation, and thanks to everyone there for all the work you guys do. I'm wondering, it's impressive what you've built, and I just see the number of freezers you have, and I think of the expense of what that is. I don't think most people in the audience understand what it's like to have that many freezers and the cost, and how you have to probably fight with the university to keep that space for storage. And I'm wondering what the plans are for the future, as unfortunately people will keep dying from this disease. How much room do you have to grow? There are much older people in the field who have brain banks, and what will happen to those brain banks, which are very precious? Will you guys be able to absorb those brains, and if so, how have you thought about that?
Yeah, those are really good points. It is a struggle. Our biggest struggle for a while was having the space. We had these freezers spread out across multiple buildings, multiple rooms. It was not very efficient, and those rooms were not designed to hold many freezers. Then the heat increases, and then you have freezer failures and stuff like that. So being able to have that dedicated space that's open, really designed as a repository, was a huge win. The other aspects just really deserve a lot of creativity, because we actually don't have formal funding to be a biorepository, right? CDC, they help us as much as they can, but they fund for surveillance, not for the repository aspect, although they definitely realize that it's important to do that. So they help us as much as we can. Otherwise, we have to be really creative. So much to everyone's chagrin on this panel, we've opened other projects like being part of an Alzheimer's disease research center, because that allows infrastructure for things like a biorepository. You guys have helped out a lot with a lot of your donations. So we've made it work. We actually haven't had them complain too much recently. So I think we're doing something right. They seem to be quite happy. And, you know, it is a lot over time. So we have done things to make better use of our space. I mean, we were keeping everything, like even every CSF sample, which is tens of thousands. So, you know, finally we were like, well, we don't need to keep samples on people that aren't RT quick positive or we don't have brain tissue on, and that helps free up space. So, but it's definitely doable. You just have to be creative.
I have two comments. So as part of our medical education programs, oftentimes people ask for infection control.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, stand. Okay. Oftentimes, people ask for infection control information or presentations, and we now can go to Tatiana, who is able to actually communicate with those people, or families, some of which are in the audience, like Nikki here is doing infection control, and connect them with Tatiana, and she can do, you know, some education on that. So we appreciate that. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, I know you brought it up last year, but we have so many new people, about Erin Koth, who is the on-site mortician. I don't know if you wanted to bring that up, but that's pretty cool and amazing that you can do that.
Aaron is our rock star. He formerly was the chief mortician for University Hospitals of Cleveland, but we kind of wooed him away, and he seems to be very happy. But Aaron travels around the country for us to perform cases or provide services for family members. He actually has 2 mobile units that he utilizes, where we can actually travel to where the family member is located and perform the service on the grounds of the funeral home. So that way the loved one does not have to leave. But he has, what, 3,000 medical autopsies under his belt or something along those lines. So he's very versed. He helps with the education with mortuary professionals, you know, his colleagues, so he can talk to them on common ground. Sometimes he'll tell them they're not the sharpest tool in the shed. But it's all in good faith. You know, we're here to provide a service for you guys, and whatever that we can do to support Aaron in his job to support you guys is what we do. So.
And just an exceptional human being. I mean,
Most definitely.
Everyone loves Aaron. So.
Yes, right now he is in Alaska.
Yeah. Doing a case, right?
Doing a case.
Yeah. So Katie, you've been here a long time.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of things. What is your take on the surveillance center, how it's grown? What have you been
I know.
struck by? What is your favorite part of the center, that kind of stuff?
The people are my favorite part of the center. We have some turnover because we're in the lab and people move on, they get other jobs, but, you know, everyone's always there to support you guys, to do the diagnosis, to make sure that all the information is correct. You know, we're here for you and for the other families that, you know, will need our services, and I think everyone at the center understands that. It's a very unique place to work. We're all a little quirky, but, you know, we're not a big group. There's maybe under 20 of us doing everything, but we all love what we do, and we all love to talk to you guys, and I think that's what makes us great.
All right. Tia, is it okay to come back to you? So Tia, you're also interesting because you came from your mortuary background, of course, but also before you came to see us, you were working in a clinical histology lab at the VA.
Yes.
And I don't think you had done any type of like research setting. So can you tell me a little bit about what that was like and what has it been for you since you moved to the surveillance center?
Sure. So I worked at the VA hospital for like 13 years or so, and that's surgical pathology. So we don't get a lot of infectious tissue at all. So it was basically the same practice, but when I moved over to the Prion Center, you know, it was a little bit more precautions we had to take with the tissue. It was different to learn, you know, because like I said, I never worked with infectious tissue, and mortuary background. In school, I remember they touched upon prion cases, and they scared the crap out of us. Basically, it's like, don't touch it, and you know, just scared us. I just remember prion, just don't scare us. So when I seen the, job listing for prion, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this will be interesting. And I just
ran right over.
I'm having like a full circle moment here, like. But when I got into the lab and seen, the safety practices that we take, and I just seen how much misinformation is really out there. I actually went with Aaron and Danielle to my old mortuary college, and you just wouldn't believe some of the questions and the misconceptions that they still have. Asking, like, once they're done with the case, do they throw all their instruments away? And I'm like, oh, heavens, no, we can disinfect them and they're fine. But it's just breaking that barrier, of, there was a woman in the audience I spoke with, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but she was saying when they came to get her loved one, when he or she passed, that the removal team didn't want to touch the body or wanted to keep the sheets or, didn't want to touch anything. And it's education. A lot of times when someone passes away, a lot of the funeral homes use third parties to remove people, and they don't know. They're just regular people. They're not trained, they don't know, so they might take over and beyond precautions, extra precautions, So I think it's important with my background to educate people as well as the safety. We clean our lab, we wear all our PPE and keep ourselves safe, and so far we haven't had any issues that I know of. And I just wanted to let you guys know that, we are doing, Tatiana is good at making sure we're compliant, because we have regulatory compliances and stuff we have to keep up with as well. So, yeah, that was about the difference. Like I said, infectious and non-infectious tissue. But I really enjoy working with the center. Everybody's great. We're like a little family, and I hope Brian keeps me here.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Do you foresee any changes in the way that autopsy results will be reported, maybe directly to the family instead of through the doctor?
Do you want to talk about the change of reports and stuff like that?
We didn't change reporting. I mean, we changed the way the reports look. So we used to have a very drawn out, very long reports full of lots of words that nobody understood anyway. So we've shortened that all down and compressed it into one report at the end. That makes it much easier for the families to understand. It literally spells out, this is what the type is at the end of the day. As far as results directly to families, I don't think we can do that, mostly because we're like a third-party testing facility, essentially. So we're consulting for you. So it has to go through a physician to be able to explain the results.
I mean, we do some workarounds sometimes.
We do, yeah,
right?
we do.
So if you're in the telemedicine study, I'm a physician as part of that study, so that's one way I can give you the results, right? And then sometimes we just, people don't get contacted at all by the physician that we send the report to. We just just have to do it. But legally, we should try to go through the proper channels of going through the physician.
Do you have the option of a copy going to the family doctor, the general practitioner, that we have on our consent form? They can add in the name of their GP family doctor, and a copy goes to that doctor, which is much easier to access than trying to go back through the clinical team that cared for your loved one, because there is a period of time. So I'm just wondering if you have that option as well.
Yeah, the family picks who they want the report to go to. Yeah, and it can be multiple people. Danielle, you had a question?
Oh, it's okay.
All right. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much for everything that you do to support the center. Of course, the funding has been fantastic. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you to CDC for helping us do our work and supporting us. So, thanks.